Today, I'm going to summarize The Corn Maiden by Joyce Carol Oates. It is a very scary short story involving sacrifice and pain, agony, fire, and it was published in 2005. It's longer than a short story, more like a novella. Let's begin. So, a girl named Jude calls herself Master of Eyes and Jude the Obscure. She admires a young girl with blonde hair from a distance, it's silky gold like corn tassels. The girl is with her mother, who bends down to give her a kiss. The little girl's name is Marissa. As a preteen, the Master of Eyes on the internet named Jude Jude the Obscure. Master of Eyes said all her wishes will be granted in time. This led to Jude in sixth grade wandering away from her group at a museum for a field trip to see the Indian Onigara exhibit, Sacrifice of the Corn Maiden. The exhibit was graphic and banned to any minors under 16 without a parental consent, but she slipped in to see it anyway. Jude was always like the cool kid growing up and kind of like a deviant. In school, she would give the kids different substances like X. She had prescriptions for different controlled substances, but she didn't take them and stockpiled them instead because she was mentally ill. So now we go to the point of view of Marissa's mom, which is the name of the little girl. So Marissa's mom, named Leah, enters her house at around 8 p.m. to find her 11-year-old daughter, Marissa, missing. Marissa was a latchkey kid, which is basically like kids who come home from school and let themselves in and wait for their parents to come home. So the mom, Leah, frantically combed through the house trying to find her daughter, but she wasn't there. She was a single mom with no help or real support. Marissa had a learning disability and was placed into a private school, but was bullied by the kids. Leah tried to rationalize her daughter being missing. Maybe she was at a neighbor's house or something. She knocked on all the apartment doors and no one had seen her. She was a secret functioning alcoholic, but only kept beer at home. And she was a really excellent mother. Leah drinks some beer as she processes the situation of her daughter being missing, and she finally calls 911 knowing that she will be blamed, and she is just sick with guilt. And then she also reveals that she had stopped for beer at 7-Eleven on the way home. Now we go back to talking about Jude. So, Jude had grown up with numerous documented psychological and mental illnesses. She was even suspended once for threats. Michael at the school was a 31-year-old substitute teacher, and Jude was only 13, but she was completely infatuated with him and would often ride her bicycle by his house, and he didn't know her. Michael was indifferent about his students and was kind of a loner. She sent him an anonymous email saying, "You are Master Z," but he didn't reply, which infuriated her. And she says that he will pay for this. Michael, the substitute teacher, when he gets the email, just deletes it and forgets about it, right? He's a teacher who gets tons of emails. Teacher himself didn't know much about Jude other than that she kind of was unattractive and smelled bad. And he had this strange feeling sorry for her feeling. Jude and her followers fed the Corn Maiden vanilla ice cream. Jude's followers or friends, whatever you want to call them, were Anita and Denise. They had gained Marissa's trust, and she walked with them contently to Jude's house, not putting up a fight. Jude had groomed her for several months to gain that trust. In the Corn Maiden Indian Onigara ceremonies in the past, the Corn Maiden would be kidnapped from an enemy tribe. Jude lived in an expensive home with her grandma on 11 acres called the Traherne Estate. Even though she lives with her grandma, she's basically unsupervised because the house is enormous and her grandma is older and not all the way there. The girls entered the house with the Corn Maiden from the back door, and the Corn Maiden laid sedated and asleep on a soft bed of pillows with blankets, and her hair sprawled out around her. And she was sedated with Jude's stash, and they had spiked her ice cream. They stripped her clothes off, all of them, and she was obviously cold and was shivering really hard, but she was still unconscious. They brought her to the cellar, which is in a soundproof kind of hidden part of the estate. The two other girls went home, and Jude kept vigil watching the Corn Maiden as she slept. And Jude thought to herself that she wouldn't bind her until it was necessary, and she took several pictures of her. So now we go back to Leah, Marissa's mom. Police officers arrived to Leah's house after she calls 911 about her daughter, Marissa, being missing. The police officer questioned her, and by 10 p.m., the story of missing Marissa became breaking news. It gathered a ton of attention because it was a young white girl missing in a very wealthy area, which is very rare. Leah tries to stay positive, hoping that all this media will help find her. The media scrutinizes how long it took Leah to get home and report her daughter missing, and police even contemplate charging her with neglect. It was also leaked to the media that she was drunk when she called the police officers, like when she called 911. Leah answered the same questions by law enforcement over and over. She hadn't had contact with Marissa's biological father for 7 years now. We learned through Leia's interrogations that she actually made another stop before going home. She went to her boss's house where they shared a drink platonically, but he was married and they had been intimate once before. Leia is just in despair, awaiting news about her daughter, and the town is plastered with her missing posters, and a 50K reward was offered. Anita, which was one of Jude's followers, remember, lied and told authorities that she saw Marissa being pulled into a minivan. The only staff that hadn't been interviewed at the school was Michael, remember, who was the substitute teacher that Jude was mad at. He was mostly a loner and spent a lot of his time in nature, hiking and running. A lonely married woman had invited him over for dinner, which she often did, but he just didn't decide to go that Friday. But this meant that the time Marissa went missing, he didn't have an alibi. And Michael is shocked and confused when he is arrested suddenly. Now we go back to Jude. Jude and her friends fed the Corn Maiden a mostly liquid diet, and Jude was only allowed soft white foods like ice cream and cottage cheese. The little girl begged for more food, but they refused and kept her sedated. She was super weak. Jude said she needed to be weak to prepare for the rapture. They helped her stumble to a pot in the cellar to go to the bathroom. She was miserable and would cry for her mom and couldn't walk. She would weep. She was left alone at night in the pitch black and would scream to be let out. It was horrific. So back at school, it's revealed that Mr. Z, Michael, is still incarcerated and the prime suspect. The van that Anita reported Marissa being pulled into was his Honda, and Denise told the school that Mr. Z was a perv, basically, to Marissa. And the girls shrieked with delight and laughter at him being arrested, that their plan kind of worked. Jude had even planted Marissa's barrette at the teacher's apartment complex. Mr. Z, Michael, claimed his innocence and was heavily interrogated. A polygraph came out inconclusive. And Leia, the mom of the missing girl, had a hard time believing that it was Mr. Z that would do this and begged to speak with him, but they wouldn't allow it. And by now, 2 more days had passed. The media now exposed Leia's affair with her married boss, and Leia's sister flew out to be with her so she wasn't alone. On Sunday, Jude, Anita, and Denise, who were keeping the Corn Maiden captive, remember, went to Leia's house, so Marissa's mom, with flowers and to pay respects. They acted super odd, almost happy and excited, overdramatic, and very insincere. And Jude insisted on praying for her. Jude took a picture of Leia as she left and was escorted out. Leia was super suspicious and uncomfortable at the interaction. Thinking about her missing daughter, Leia walked along the route where Marissa supposedly was pulled from, and she wanders into the 7-Eleven. She thought a lot about the girls and how weird they had acted. When she entered the 7-Eleven, the cashier told Leia that he remembered he saw Marissa Friday. She went missing walking with another girl. The cashier was telling her personally because he felt really uncomfortable with the police, which she kind of understood after being interrogated so heavily by them. And the cashier described the girl, and Leia realized that it was Jude, the girl that had visited her. As she leaves 7-Eleven, she is approached by none other than Jude herself, who insists that she was not following her. In an awkward and really tense exchange, Jude tells Leia that Marissa and her were friends and that Mr. Z, Michael, is basically a deviant who calls himself master, among all kinds of other lies. And Jude says Marissa often told her secrets and said that she really just wanted to live with her dad and that she probably ran away, which like devastated Leia beyond belief. And so that was on Sunday and she went missing on Friday. Mr. Z, the substitute teacher, was now released and had an attorney, but everyone thought he was guilty. He didn't have an attorney for earlier questioning because he was innocent, and the police made it sound like it was mistaken identity type of thing. The teacher was banned from campus and suspended with pay. But by Tuesday, the police lost interest because the Bretts had no prints at all, which was kind of suspicious. And they had other leads, thinking maybe Leia's biological father was somehow involved. Now we head to the sacrifice. Things felt off to Jude since she gave Leia the flowers. The Corn Maiden barely ate at this point, and that night she had seizures and barely held on to life at all. Things didn't feel fun anymore. Jude acted super bizarre, taking photos of everything, obsessing about fire for the sacrifice. The original story of the Corn Maiden sacrifice from the Native Americans, the maiden would be bound and her heart carved out. Jude's friends and followers, Anita and Denise, were really afraid of Jude at this point. Jude had slapped Anita for questioning her, and they were just terrified of her. Jude emailed the Master of Eyes asking if the Corn Maiden was ready to be sacrificed. And the Master of Eyes replied basically like, LOL, where do you live? How old are you? You're so silly. And this spooked her, thinking maybe it was the police, and she never went online again. The website she was using was called darkspeaklink.com. And remember, she's 13, so. It had now been 6 days since the kidnapping. Anita hadn't come to school since Jude yelled at her. Denise was in a total daze and tried to convince Jude that it was time to let Marissa go, like she was not doing well. But Jude threatened her, so she stopped talking to Jude. Jude decided things were ready and she would go out herself with the Corn Maiden by self immolation, which is like lighting yourself on fire. She knew she had to hurry because the girls would tell on her, like her friends, because she was acting so bizarre at this point. So she quickly wrote a note, excitedly thinking about it being read on the news. Jude doused the cellar with gasoline, and a naked Marissa seemed to know something was wrong and got the strength to crawl towards the door and was begging for her life and for her mother. Jude is surprised that the Corn Maiden wants to live, so she only lights herself. It's 5 months later, and Michael and Leia are now dating. And Marissa is healthy, alive, and back home. Leia had moved out of town, and Marissa was placed in another school that fit her needs better. Leia had lost all of her hair when her daughter was missing and was hospitalized for several weeks due to the stress and trauma of this whole ordeal. She was now doing a lot better. Her and Marissa were in extremely intensive physical therapy, and shockingly, Marissa had minor physical lasting side effects from this. Leia bonded deeply with her sister, who had helped her through recovery. And they discovered that Marissa's father was actually found deceased in kind of a suspicious boating accident anyway, so he was not involved. Leia was just so grateful for the truth. Michael and Leia tried very, very hard to understand why Jude did what she did to Marissa. And after Jude's immolation, Marissa had crawled into the house where she was saved by Jude's grandma. Anita and Denise, which were Jude's friends, insisted they didn't think Jude was serious. They were basically manipulated and thought she wasn't going to go all the way through with it. Michael, the substitute teacher, had been the first one to write Leia, and she eventually responded, leading to their communication and happy relationship because they both had known that he wasn't the one that was responsible. Now, at a picnic, the couple strolls behind Marissa as she contemplates her fate. Loves it. I absolutely love it. I love this story. If you have any questions, leave them down below because I know this video is already long. Okay, but yes, has happy ending.